Meanwhile, Tista's moved on. He's caught someone else with a Howling Blast. He's very impressive as a warrior player.
KSV's map selection for Game 2 is going to be Infernal Shrines, a map they used to prioritize as their very highest priority. It dropped for some period of time, but it seems like at the GCWC, MVP, or excuse me, KSV's a little bit more comfortable to go back to Infernal Shrines.
It's interesting. I remember it being a problem for them that they would pick it into, at that time, was it Tempest or Ballistics?
I believe that was Tempest that created the problems on Shrines.
Yeah, they would pick it as a favored pick and started losing consistently there. Enough so that it never, I don't think it went as far as to be a ban for them, but
no. Finally
was traded away as the favored pick and went to things like, well, Battlefield of Eternity has been a map for them for as long as I can remember, but things like Towers of Doom for a little while was a thing for them, Tomb as well.
Honestly, it feels like since that point, they've only mirrored what is the most prominent out of the top European team. It is a little weird to think about, but now that you bring that up, like when Towers was the thing, that was also when Fanatic Global, and like Towers was pretty high impact, and then eventually Europe transitioned to Tomb, and it feels like whenever they go to an international, whatever region they feel is providing the most fight, it becomes the new map for them to appreciate the most. And Tomb on Europe has been at the staple for so long, and it seems like that's kind of been its own. Granted, it's slightly shifting now. They have built their own identity, it feels like, again, which is, it's so interesting to see that. They ran the show, and then it's like, well, once Europe starts going, it's like, oh, we'll play your guys' map, and it's like, nah, it's back to the Shrines.
Sometimes I wonder if the European teams at the top, Fnatic and Team Dignitas specifically, are ever like, I wish we had peaked just a little bit later in the year and not lit a fire underneath the Korean teams, because that at mid-season brawl was the time that, well, you talked about Sake.
Yeah. When I was at mid-season brawl, I got to be lucky enough to sit in a elevator with Sake, Coach Kim, and Mary Day. And Sake kind of, after the performance, they were definitely down on themselves, and I was complimenting Mary Day and just saying, you know, I wanted to appreciate the amount of work and effort he's given. As a former support player playing against him, he was a guy I looked up to. And then Sake just kind of looks at me and he goes, you know, wait for BlizzCon. And
he wasn't wrong.
And he just, like, it was the most, like, wait for BlizzCon. Like, you have no idea what is coming. And it was, I mean, it could not have been more perfect in the manner that they had done. Except for going undefeated, I feel like it's the only way I could have looked at that and then just like, damn, Sake.
It was impressive, an impressive performance. And it was cool to see, because they had won a global championship before, but spring never mattered to them the way a BlizzCon did. And now we have draft 2 for these teams. KSV, very fast game 1, controlled, winning quickly versus Roll20. Roll20 has a Tassadar, though. That's a great start to Infernal Shrines.
Greymane Karazim for KSV. Even though Greymane is high priority because he is that jack of all trades, it's a pretty good Flask build map. It's one of the, you know, when he was nerfed temporarily and not considered objectively powerful, this was the map we saw him higher priority, like Battlefield of Eternity as well, because of his race potential. And then the Karazim, higher Karazim than maybe some of the other parts of the tournament, especially because Rhaegar made it through, considering, you know, how much shrine control he has on its own. But KSV's last draft was also very unique, and I don't think there's any reason for them to have doubt within themselves. So I'm going to say about anything they pick, it's really up to them. They could pick next pick Nazeebo, and I'd be like, makes sense. Seems legit.
Hold on now. I know we're in China.
You know Sake hears the call.
We're in China.
You know Sake hears the call.
Just because you want to see Sake play Ginger Dread and Nazeebo.
Dude, that thing, oh man, KO has a cutout and it sits in my apartment and it's the most terrifying thing in the world.
Fall at Arthas, back to Arthas for Roll20. They have had ETC ban against them a couple of times now. This time even rising to the first ban from KSV.
I did want to say that though this isn't necessarily a common rotation for your 1 through 3 for a North American team, or even maybe at this tournament, these not only they have really good synergy across the board altogether, but more importantly is kind of that Tassadar Arthas. That's another case where through the rise and fall of a warrior, it was only when paired with Tassadar did he feel like he had enough survivability and problems. And when you look at how effective he is as self-sustaining, if you give him one shield mixed with the Icebound Fortitude, he goes from being a great hero to, I mean, an amazing one.
And he's already been doing amazingly well at this event. Ario ban. Arthas versus Greymane and Karazim 2 is, of course, a great pick. the slows there make it scarier for Greymane to be able to dive in. And of course, his slow also functions as an attack speed slow, which is great for both Karazim and Greymane, and to scare Karazim from diving in. And that only gets scarier at 16 with Remorseless Winter. So great pickup for Roll20 Esports. Maybe would have even been a ban from KSV, but not being able to do that, they'll ban Ariel, Roll20, take away the classic Kyocha Ana.
Guys, I'm absolutely just the most scary Ana player I feel like we've seen so far. His sleep darts, that's not actually totally true. I feel like we have some of the European players have really put up solid arguments, specifically Schwimpy.
Okay.
But, you know, Kyocha, his sleep darts don't seem to miss. They just stun, and then the team is really patient within getting their damage output. Like, it's scary how they just kind of go, no, not this guy, not yet, and then just eventually get the damage output in. But they're going to go with the Li Ming double reset, and the Rhaegar ends up getting picked up later into the draft than you would expect. Due to that, I mean, Ana ban from Roll20 versus the Rhaegar. That's an interesting thought that they had, that they were more afraid of that than what would accent not only the map, but, I mean, the guy's a beast. Rhaegar is 100% involvement rate.
I wonder if that Ana ban is something, again, from scrims that they have encountered or run into, knowing that there's already Greymane. Entirely likely that KSV could want to go for another one of their double reset comps with Greymane Li Ming.
Roll20's draft right now is really well equipped to deal with what KSV drafted, though. I want to say, unlike the last game where you saw the huge shift into the Rhaegar, into Ab Illidan, that was reacting to Roll20 and their draft so far in that very predictable playstyle. Whereas what we see throughout this game, I feel as if it's the opposite. KSV's kind of drafting into the strengths of Roll20's comp. And again, because of the skill disparity between the teams, I don't put that as maybe too big of a concern. But it is, they have a lot of really good tools, maybe except for the Stukov is the only one I would say that's an at-risk pick here.
Yeah, he has a lot of trouble functioning against heavy dive. And there are some dive heroes for KSV, but the Arthas should, in theory, be able to help with that. And D.Va too, because of the self-destructs. And it's D.Va! Roll20 brings back D.Va, first D.Va of the Gold Club World Championship.
And normally, KSV in this type of situation, now seeing that Arthas, he's going to be fine. Volatassadar, they should be able to stop with the double reset minus major mispositioning in any situation. They still commit down the route of just the standard Murden in this type of situation. But normally you would like to say, I have enough slots remaining into my draft that I do the exact same thing I did into the last. And that's what I was trying to talk about in the last rotation, is that KSV has not got a lot of ways to play this out, that they have to play into Roll20. And I'm really hoping this game looks a lot closer. Judging by the draft alone, I would even say that, like, if you remove the team names, I look at Roll20's draft and go, I feel like it's near 50-50, maybe slightly into their favor. That being said, I'm not a huge D.Va fan, never really have been. I think she's leaves something to be desired most of the times when she is picked, but if you make the mistake of focusing her too hard, you know, sometimes it can really turn around a fight.
Yeah, and it is her maybe best battleground.
Yeah.
Always, ever since her release, people have talked about her on Infernal Shrines, and that's because a lot of the shrines have such good choke points. And I'm not sure that we're going to see something like they tried to run with the Falstad D.Va versus Ballistics at BlizzCon, which was going for the aggressive fly gust into self-destruct, mainly because that would have to be the flanking Stukov with the flailing swipe. That sounds very scary.
I mean, you don't even have to go flailing swipe. You know,
Here's
just go
Arthas.
Across the map. Go ahead and hit him with it.
Oh, you're talking about a massive shove?
Yes. Hello.
I think you're going to want the swipe to stop the resets, though, right?
I mean,
you just want fully.
If we're going to go for the wombo, let's go. No, I agree with you. In all cases, that seems like a very risky strategy for Roll20. But we'll find out. We'll figure out how it's going to function here as we are getting ready for Game 2 on Infernal Shrines in the blue. Representing North America, it is Roll20 Esports. Kira on Volodyansky on Tassadar. Justing playing the D.Va. Buds will be playing Stukov, and Arthas played by Goku.
Some slight flexing there, but it's not the first time Justing's played D.Va in a tournament. Meanwhile, winning the first game in the series, KSV, Test playing Muradin, Reset on Li Ming. Rich playing Greymane, Kyocha playing the Rhaegar, and Sake on Karazim.
A lot of E-Star. Isn't that the E-Star logo on that? What logo was that spray?
Oh, I didn't
The
see it.
KSV was, I thought that was the E-Star. I thought that was a little bit of respect right there.
Respect. Yeah, that is E-Star.
4 out of the 5 of them have the E-Star respect there.
Oh,
For anybody
cool.
who doesn't know, MVP Black, when way back for the longest time, when you asked them what is the only region or teams in the world that you respect, and it was only E-Star. Kira able to make it out here, maybe not for long. Tist hits the Storm Bolt, Justin with really nice boop there, using those thrusters. No kill here yet for either team.
Reset taking out the mech was nicely done. And then even forcing Buds to try to soak up some of those skill shots just to make sure that the very squishy pilot mode of D.Va could get back behind the gate. The Goku, both Goku and Justin have played D.Va before. Even at BlizzCon, both of them played it. But it is interesting to see what would normally be the primary warrior and the D.Va switching between the two teams. And I think that is just a product of Roll20 feeling like maybe the better D.Va player is Justin, or Goku having more the practice on Arthas. But it's interesting to see them make that swap.
I think if I was, yeah, I agree with you. It is a little bit interesting for anybody who watches North America avidly. It is a bit out of place, but I would say it's only because of the laning situation they expect themselves in, probably because Arthas oftentimes will be the one off onto the side trying to deal with any 1 versus 1 or split pressure if that comes into play.
Yeah.
We got ourselves the very first Shrine phase. When we look at the Shrine, there's a lot of control on the composition of Roll20, which is why, you know, I was talking about these compositions are dead even, who pulls ahead, because KSV has to find a way to get kills. Now, their composition is amazing at getting kills, but there are pretty good resources at dealing with that by Roll20 between that Tassadar, Arthas, and Stukov.
Yeah, even D.Va, once he gets a self-destruct, D.Va can drop down the self-destruct when people start to run in, and that gets some time for Roll20 to leave back. There's Lightning Bond for KSV, that helps with that. And then as Greymane continues to build into this cocktail and gets the stacks of Incendiary Elixir later on, that'll also be really good for KSV. But Roll20 using the good Shrine Clear to get a lead, 20 to the 13 Skeletal Defenders of KSV.
It's a really good sidestep on that cocktail on top to make sure that Goku, I don't think he would have died to it, but it would have been very close, inches away, even forcing Rich to make the back there. And KSV is forfeited. And they're just going to be looking for the side lane pressure. Early map objective, though, on Infernal Shrines, it's a bit, you know, just kind of whenever you lose it. It's more about, did you lose too much on the side? Did you lose too many kills? And KSV's composition, they're playing with the understanding that they don't have very much Shrine control. So they're waiting for the later stages, probably post-10 is when we can expect them to move and bring the fight to Roll20.
Part of the problem for Roll20 is that, yes, they did keep Goku in the top, and yes, he did give them some the soak up in the top lane, but he was pretty low on resources early on from that. Now Dainty's going up to help him, but because of how low he was, KSV felt very comfortable to push way more than maybe they would have otherwise. They've taken nearly half of the fort out here. They already have the well down, already have the front wall down, and they ended up getting even a little bit more than Roll20 got, even using the self-destruct here in the bottom lane. And they pulled up some of the members of Roll20 just because it was such an issue for Roll20. But Roll20 wants to go back in. They still have all the members down here to try to siege down, including Cure with that sustained damage. And they will take out the fort, same as KSV.
That was just really cleverly done by KSV. And I will say that I do feel like there is enough within the composition by Roll20 to have bettered that circumstance. They didn't need to lose that much, but it does show that Roll20's comp doesn't have enough siege or protection in certain areas to where they can play around with their decision making, that they need to be probably more clumped up and make sure that they can force these fights later on. But then now KSV is going to be the one looking to make that happen because they got so much out of that first phase that debatably they shouldn't have been able to.
Sake dove in aggressively, putting some damage down as Roll20 was trying to take their camp. I was looking at the unorthodox Skullcracker pick. Since Heavy Impact was nerfed, we have seen a lot more of Give Him the Axe, but not too much of the Skullcracker yet. But it does give that extra damage on that third attack, as well as the stun, adding to more of the stun lock, maybe to give more time for a 7-sided strike to get the intended kills from that, for Greymane and Leeming to be able to pick up a reset.
It can also provide a less necessary reason, because if we look at how many interrupts exist for Lurking Arf, it becomes a problem. Generally, you want the Murd and Stormbolt to set up the kill, especially with a double reset composition and a Karzim to get the punches 7-sided.
Yeah.
So how do you do that, but also find a way to get an interrupt to the lurking? If it gets a problem, just throw a couple auto attacks immediately after. It's pretty, you know, fun little talent for anybody who hasn't picked it up at home, especially against just anything with channels. It used to be shown, wow, Justin.
Oh,
I am so sorry for how fast that life just disappeared.
Yeah, that's the power of the double reset if he goes in to go for the throat. But with the Leeming, the Greymane, the damage from that, the damage from Karazim, it's scary that KSV can run that and get a kill like that. That sets them up beautifully to head straight to this top shrine. Roll20 has a change of plans on the dime, not having heroic abilities, not being as close as KSV are. They're going to have to push somewhere else.
They're going to have to push somewhere else, but because the Shrine control dinks the Rhaegar and Greymane is actually pretty good on its own, they can just two-man capture with a three-man defense. And because of the lack of siege we were referring to before on the side of Roll20, I don't feel like they're going to make that much happen. It's a bit of a struggle when you build your composition around the idea of like a specific map objective, but your opponent is not catering to it. And this is the second time where we find Roll20, it just they end up falling behind in situations where it's because of their composition and KSV's not playing into their hand.
I'm finding great enjoyment in watching Tist just stare at Justing, and the minute booster starts, no.
Nope, not today.
You don't get to speed away, I'm sorry. And that backfired heavily for Justing. That may change, should change how we see him play in those. Maybe play not quite so aggressively, because using both, or losing both self-destruct and the life of D.Va because of this great stun lock that they have. They're going to try to do it again. Flailing Swipe is used though. Rich still trying to go in and get the kill.
He went for the throat, but he didn't get it, so that's a cooldown for 75. But KSV still gained quite a bit off of that, at least a little bit of damage into the key front wall, rotating out throughout mid. Roll20 has been cycling around the map quite a bit here, but I'm looking for when are they going to try and force a team fight? Are they going to wait until the actual next shrine phase? Or are they looking to maybe punish elsewhere? If they are going to look to try and punish, they can only do it on bottom because it's the only fortless lane for them.
Excellent juke from Rich there to get away, watching for the Howling Blast, jumping in on top of Goku and then dashing out. Talk to Goku about his respect for Rich as the counterpart to his role from KSV. He does feel like he has a ton of respect for Rich and that there's a lot to learn from him, even on this more ranged assassin type role. Justing's going to go in further. Trying to drop down, 7-sided strike is used, almost there for self-destruct possibly, and there it'll go down.
Self-destruct goes down, but it doesn't get any damage on any member of KSV. Now, they looked like they were going to collapse for a moment. A lot of damage onto Justin. Goku not able to hit the Howling Blast, but Tist hits the Storm Bolt. Nice lurking arm from Buzz to pull back for a moment, but Goku is going to go down even with that Flailing Swipe. And reset, he got his resets, and we know what happens when that happens. More people die. Buds is next, and it is just now KSV opening up that fight.
Team always plays so well around Li Ming, trying to set up for that damage. Like Karazim going in, Sake loves his Karazim. This is, I think he said it was his favorite of the secondary supports to play. Things worked out for Roll20. They were very focused on getting that fort so that they could open up the map more, then they could catch up in experience. But because they had to use a lot, they didn't have Army of the Dead from that. Justing was able to booster out, but Goku was trapped and the first to start that reset chain for KSV. Now KSV are trying to siege up in the mid as well, but with respawn timer still being fairly low, Roll20 makes it back in time to save it. They just need to catch up now to 13.
Just feels like that's about the third time in this game that KSV has been down a man in a situation, but purely because of the lack of siege or the weaknesses of the composition of Roll20. They're trying to force through their weaknesses, and then KSV goes, well, we now have the 5-man. We can look to get the force and get the fight onto you, and it's just been difficult for them to deal with. The Shrine fight here, full heroics and 13 into 13, is the fight that Roll20 has built their composition around for a long while. So if they're going to be successful in this game, I feel like it's going to show right here onto the Shrine.
Absolutely agree, especially with Justing having self-destruct available. All of their ducks are in a row for this fight right here. They just need 13, and there it is. Dropped, insta-picked up, and Roll20 heads in for the fight.
Tears under a lot of pressure, though. Cleanse on to the Greymane is going to allow Rich to make it out. They use the Ancestral. 7-sided goes down, but he's going to be isolated. Sake uses the Radiant Dash. He is going to be fine for a few, but Reset falls low. Roll20's winning this fight.
Roll20 goes in, back in with Justing, trying to body block a lot of members. He gets the emergency shielding that keeps him alive a little bit longer, but he's still going to pop out of this. Dodges the orb. The rest of Roll20, dimensional shifting back. D.Va goes down, and even though Roll20 initially looked so good in that fight, it's KSV who somehow comes out on top like always.
Really great job there, recollecting themselves and capitalizing on the misposition of Vala. Once Vala drops in this composition, there is no damage done. There is absolutely nothing. Cure cannot take that type of risky positioning, and that was Rich there to get that punishment. So very well done for KSV, and it comes with a lot of gains now. They have not only a Punisher, but a Punisher with no fort throughout the mid lane, and they can probably just take a keep front wall, cycle down to bottom, ensure the fort there. It's really... They can paint the map red on top of it. There's so many different ways to play Infernal Shrines in this middle stage of the game. I'm actually going to be curious to see what KSV's choice is on to further their lead.
Yeah, they have a lot of different things that they can do, and I love to see that they are stalling out the Shrine until they can get some more things on the board. Even though Roll20 lost that last fight, still have to hand it to Buds. I feel like his silences, his lurking arms, the locations were fantastic. Even though Rich was cleansed as he was backing out after getting caught at the beginning of the fight, still had the lurking arm underneath trying to get time for the team to be able to take him out. And now that he has virulent reaction as another way of being able to lock someone down and let Arthas get on top of that, even getting targeted excision so that it won't come at too much of a cost potentially, so that he can still have his bio kill switch up. Let's see if Buds can make the plays to let Roll20 turn this game around.
Keep front wall did end up dropping, as we were saying before. This turret secures the 16. Roll20 is going to move up, but this is a fight that they do not want. If they were going to take it, it should have been a few seconds ago before the 16's hit. They hit the Mecha Explosion. Rain of Vengeance go down. A lot of pressure onto Tis, but the knockback pushing him out of that second Rain.
Army of the Dead used as Tis willing to dive back in using the 7-sided strike. But Goku is still fairly healthy thanks to the Army, thanks to the double supporting of Roll20's composition.
That whole fight pushed away from that middle keep, and I'm surprised that KSV is willing to walk away from it now. It seems like they traded up.
Wow.
Rich taking too much damage there after a nice Howling Blast out of Goku. That was such a curious decision-making from both sides. The fact that Roll20 was willing to only initiate after their keep, after 16 was achieved, which is, I mean, there's no way you can objectively measure that was a better situation for them. But then KSV understood that, tried to poke and prod, but then wasn't worthy to force once way too many resources were used by Roll20.
Really strange. It seemed like Roll20 wanted to posture up a bit more just to see if they could push KSV away. It didn't seem like it would be scary enough without the 16, but they did save their keep because of it.
Yeah, and that, oh wait though, Goku, he's going to eat a bit of damage out of the 7-sided.
Clipped by the edge of that.
See where the pressure of KSV now goes after, now that's a fortless game for Roll20. They're going to keep furthering it up on bottom. Rhaegar's going to go ahead and back up, pick up the camp on his own. Probably worried towards that Shaman camp as we have the next Shrine phase just now spawning.
We'll be up in the top lane, but because that top lane is so pushed and Roll20 still don't have 16, KSV will have the better setup to go to that and get things started, get a skeletal defender lead that Roll20 will have to make some tough decisions around. Justin still working to make sure that he has self-destruct ready for that fight, as well as the team trying to soak up the lanes, take care of the mercenary camp pressure so that they can be in a good place for that fight.
Shrine already going to be started. Good dismounting here from Tist. He's just slowing the transitions to make sure they get as many skeletal defenders as they can, because this is the one of those situations that this is, again, same talent tier on a Shrine. This is what the comp of Roll20 was built for. And I just highlighting every small decision. 7-sided Goku takes so much damage. He's going to keep himself alive. Look at the root and the slow. If Seshral ends up landing there on a reset, he just can now teleport out. But Buds is silenced. So good.
Rich is diving in on Cure, but the team has kept him alive. The healing really coming in and paying off in dividends now for the members of Roll20. They just take out Kharazim.
They get the kill. And now they're going to be able to get the retreat to go on to the objective. 22 skeleton defenders with that 18 remaining. They do have the Rhaegar, but I don't think that's enough to make sure that they can get this type of poke.
Yo, Goku was so awesome that fight. Both Howling Blasts.
He's going to go ahead and get a flank here. Throws it down, lands onto Kyoja. Reset, not able to do too much damage thanks to that W from Justin.
Goku
though, he's out of position.
Yeah, he's taking so much damage, and the problem from that is Justin wasn't able to keep him alive. He fell very, very low. The emergency shielding allowed the mecha to stay there longer, but in the end, Goku still did fall. Now Kier being harassed by Tist. The members of KSV just keeping Roll20 off of the shrine. Kier takes him out.
Tist.
Rich.
The cleanse is there. He's going to make it out. But keep in mind that because the Rhaegar is still alive and Greymane, both of those are still possibly enough to be able to poke off this shrine and steal some away from Roll20 and get KSV this objective. But it looks like KSV doesn't even want to risk it. They're okay and comfortable with the losses that they've had here up on top. They're going to give this over to Roll20 and get the experience elsewhere on the map. And it should be noted that that wave on bottom is actually, in fact, pretty big. So Roll20 will be on the back foot in experience even after this top fort by some... It's quite a large bit, actually.
KSV making a choice from a seasoned veteran perspective that they lost enough at the top, and because they still had the fort, because they still had towers up here, it's not as big of an issue to lose that because they already were giving a lot of experience to Roll20 and the few kills that Roll20 were able to succeed. They're still closer to 20. That still bodes well for them as long as they can deal with this Punisher.
Camp picked up on bottom is going to be a problem if Roll20 hangs out up on top too long, because keep in mind their siege is not necessarily the best. Tist, they go ahead and use that avatar. Mecha D.Va explosion is there. Punisher leap up in a few.
Yeah, I was kind of forced to use that, maybe not exactly where he would like to, but still does drop it down before he falls out. Justin using all of that damage that he does have, the hard-hitting damage of the pilot mode, to guarantee the keep with the rest of the team. And despite being down for a majority of this game, Roll20 Esports will be able to claim the first keep in Game 2 versus KSV.
I'm impressed that they were able to zone KSV that far off, especially knowing how much time went into the consideration there from Rich into prepping that bottom lane and trying to, cut their losses and at least get a bit of damage and not, zone off, but playing to the later 20 advantage that they know they're going to find here as they're pinning the map red with some of these camps. Then we can see them get aggressive and most likely get a keep for their own with that window. But last time we saw them with that talent tier advantage in that type of situation, they were unwilling to do so.
Yeah, they were pretty passive. Stormbolt over the wall gets more damage down. I love when Tist does that. Double camp pressure in the mid. KSV are just about to 20 and Roll20 moving back. Make sure that they do get that before the siege. But I like that Roll20, at least knowing that this was a possible place for the members of KSV to siege because that keep had already taken damage. They get the camp in top, so this will be a good push for Roll20 somewhere.
I'm just surprised at how confidently KSV was willing to take this in this situation versus the very first time. Talents are a little bit different between the two, like into the mirror ball, but they end up dominantly taking over the middle keep, finding itself at almost an even game. Roll20 will be able to find that 20 before this shrine. But they do have to worry about what is going to be the only remaining Shaman camp, and what I mean here is over that next shrine phase. KSV can very comfortably pick that up in time and proper.
I don't remember what the mecha explosion was at the last time that they sieged, but it may have had something to do with that because they put a ton of damage on Justin really early on in that because of that mirror ball, and they forced him so far back. That's when it seemed like they were more confident to step forward. Plus, of course, it's 20. It's a pretty darn good talent tier advantage.
This shrine spawn is not optimal for Roll20. Again, because of the timing of the Shaman camps picked up, they are eventually going to have to worry about that Shaman camp picked up by KSV. Well, luckily for them, I guess they do have the keep down. Didn't consider that. It's really going to hinder the rate at which it can pressure out. So more it's a stalling tactic for KSV, and so now they're going to want to bring the fight.
Saki flanking around the side, puts damage on Kier. The shielding's there. Kira's A-OK. Dansky has gone into Infinite Archon, Twilight Archon form.
Keep in mind that this is an Epiphany Saki. You cannot risk any squishy like that. He is going to be able to flank and get that one shot. That's why I was so concerned. Kira's again, he's going to take the risk. Punching in. Tist goes over the wall. Seven-sided strike goes down. Saki actually getting so low after that rain.
Yeah, and then the second rain. Oh, the second rain takes him out as soon as he comes back in it. Oh my gosh, Kira just takes out Saki. This is going to be a Roll20 Punisher.
And with that, now we see a 19-minute Punisher, 50 seconds before the Saki is going to be back. Gilly, depending on how this lays out here with how much damage goes into this Punisher, I'm expecting a keep for Roll20, but if they find themselves some kills, they might be able to end this game.
There's a lot pressuring them in the mid, and there's that Shaman camp on top. So they are under a little bit of time constraint here. They take down the small wall, wanting to move in along with the Punisher. It's a mortar one. Not necessarily ideal to end the game off of. Zoning away from it now is Goku, standing in front of it. The keep goes down, and Roll20 loops around it, giving the old loop-de-loop. They go on forward. Ancestral healing
is down. Justing's going to be just fine here after he goes back into human form. Shielding on the core, 95% and counting. The Punisher's going to go ahead and make it. Infinite Archon is there. A lot of flash damage, though. Keep in mind, there's catapults on both sides. 60.
This is so much damage from both sides as Rich nearly taking down Goku. The core continuing to fall. It's 30% as Roll20 Esports brings down this core.
No way, they held off.
They didn't do it. There was the self-destruct. That was it. KSV holds at their core.
They held off. And I did not think that Roll20 wouldn't die there. I thought for sure that they were going to be able to have that happen with the Infinite Archon there, but there was so much damage out of that flash.
So much splash damage.
And now that's game. Once again.
Oh gosh, it just feels like Roll20 gets so close. Yesterday versus Fnatic. Not the last game, but this one versus KSV. KSV makes it out by the skin of their teeth with a 2-0 win.
I still don't know what to say. The fact that that game got to that position, judging by how compositionally, just the composition understanding from KSV for 15 minutes of that game, pure outplay over Roll20.
Yeah.
One game mistake on the side of KSV. Then they fail to apply pressure after Roll20 debatably takes one of the worst fights they possibly can. They don't dominantly take it. Then way later in the game, KSV is willing to take a less advantageous fight in the exact same position.
Yeah.
And then one punishment onto a 7-sided almost leads to a win. And then they get the white. Just everything from the minute that Roll20 held their own in that middle keep thing, I was like, how did this game get here? Like, how does this happen? That was so wild. It's been a long while since I've been that confused for that long within a game in terms of decision making. Because I'm like, basic math says this was better here than then, and it's just like, and it's like, nope, we're going to act differently.
Yeah, I want to go back and watch both of the times they assaulted at that keep.
Yeah.
To figure out what the difference was, what the ploy was.
I will say, even if that keep situation wasn't going to happen right away, right? Because they don't have a great sieging composition, but they have good enough poke to whittle away at it. They didn't even look at it. That is so uncharacteristic of Korean teams, or some of the best teams in the world, because all they do is take as much as they can whenever they can.
Yes.
And they walked away, but it wasn't like they were like, hey, here's the Merc camp over here we're going to do. They just hung out in limbo.
Yeah, well, and not even just like the top Korean teams. I feel like that is KSV.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
They're just like, we're up in your face. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that was wild. Very crazy. What a game. Man, it's so rough, too, because you saw how grouped Roll20 was on the core, and generally you're like, don't group on the core, but it's understandable because you don't want someone to get isolated by 7-sided strike, by Sake. They're trying to protect their Vala. It was evidence of that, like if they sit together and there was, I can't remember, I think, yeah, he did have the self-destruct, so he could drop the self-destruct to save them, and then the flailing swipe saved them from that too, but at the same time, you saw how detrimental that splash damage was from Rich. The damage here from Reset, who is MVP.
One of the best, defensive heroes in the game with Li Ming being able to get those resets, but I'm still just at a loss at that entire ending there. That was the fact that Roll20 held that close, and as you said, it's got to be heartbreaking from their end, right? That being said, I feel like if I'm looking at my games, out of all the 3 of the heartbreakers we've experienced of the 2 days, right, if you will, I do put that one the lowest of them all, just because a lot of that game and the looking at the situation that you were behind, right? Versus whereas Fnatic, they legitimately had control. And not only did they have control, they were proactive while they were leading those games. That is when you're like, we thought we knew what we were doing, and just one mistake, whereas not quite the case of that game. It was like, oh, they gave us a moment, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there was great punishment from Kira. I mean, that's the first time we've seen somebody punish the fact that 7-sided strike starts or ends in the exact same position every single time.
Right.
It was just crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy.
It was so awesome too because it sort of felt like you were very scared about it. And yeah, with Epiphany having so many dashes and Way of the 100 Fists, I think he took that one this game.
Yeah, he took Way.
Like, you're gonna do a bunch of damage, but you had the faith in Dansky to have the Tassadar shields, and just dropping the one, running back, dropping the other. Man, it was an awesome game. But in the end, KSV makes it through with still just the one loss. We've got one more series left. It's going to be BTG versus CE right after this break.